Hello, if you're watching this, you're probably on The Escapist, in which case, hi. If you're not on The Escapist, you found me on YouTube, which I'm really surprised, but happy at the same time. Anyways, today I'm going to be reviewing a movie that came out a few years ago called The Descent, and it was originally released in the United Kingdom in 2005, but for whatever reason wasn't released in the US until 2006 and had different ending on top of that, which I'm a US citizen, so I only saw the US version, and I had to base my review off that ending. And the film was directed and the screenplay was also written by Neil Marshall, whose last movie before The Descent was 2002's Dog Soldier, which I've heard is a really good movie if you're a horror movie fan, and I am, but I have not seen it, so I can't really comment personally on it. And it was produced by Christian Coulson, who, while this was his first movie, he did in a few years go on to direct a movie some of you might have heard of called Slumdog Millionaire. And we had an up-and-coming producer and proven director and a screenplay writer on it, and which seemed like a good match, and it apparently was because critics loved The Descent. Almost all of them gave it positive reviews, and it made $54 million in the box office, which was quite a bit more than the cost of the movie to make. So, question really is, what made this horror movie so much better than all the other ones that critics loved it so much? What did it do so much better? And that's something you can decide for yourself based on this review, I guess. And the film follows a girl named Sarah who's going cave diving or spelunking with her friends Juno, Sam, Beth, and Rebecca, along with one of Holly's new friend, not Holly, sorry, Juno's new friends, Holly. Yeah, this is obviously not scripted. And unfortunately, Sarah's kind of having problems because she lost her 5-year-old daughter and husband in a car accident only a year before. So Juno's basically taking her on this cave diving to try to almost help her get over it, I guess. Which, yeah, that seems like a good idea. Get over a tragic accident by putting yourself in a dangerous sport. Yeah, I can't see that going wrong. Of course, Sarah believes she's going to this tourist trap of a cave system that's been heavily explored. And if it had been, this movie wouldn't be existing, so you probably can guess that she's going to a completely unknown cave system that has hardly been charted before. And let's just say there's a reason it hasn't been charted before. And, the plot really isn't all that great, even by horror movie standards. But it does give a good reason why they can't just, go to the police station for help or call 911 or anything like that. They're in a cave system. They are literally in the middle of nowhere. No civilization anywhere to be found, and the plot is a good excuse for that. And on top of that, there's a real sense of danger there because we all know in some part of ourselves that we're not going to die in our sleep because someone's killing us in our dreams. We all know that there's probably not going to be a psychotic stranger breaking down the door and coming in our house to stab us. But cave diving, that's actually a really dangerous sport, even for people who are experienced and going through explored cave systems. So You know, it is actually in some ways a stronger plot than a lot of horror movies, despite the plot itself being somewhat thin. Uh, that sounds kind of contradictory, but trust me, it works. But even if you have a really strong plot, it doesn't do anything unless you have the characters and script to go along with it. I mean, you don't care about any of the characters, then why be invested in the movie, or why feel that they're in danger? Luckily, this movie does have really good acting and well-written characters. You know, you know, they all have their own personalities, and at the same time, we're introduced to half the characters at the beginning of the movie, but the other half aren't brought in until about 15 minutes later. And what that really does is gives us the impression that the first group of friends really knows each other, and the other ones, they are friends, but at the same time they're not as good of friends, and that's really something horror movies don't do very often. And yeah, some of the characters do dumb stuff like, hey, look, there's a hole of unknown depth, or it's a chute of unknown angle. What? Let's just go jumping into it. That doesn't end well, by the way. And if you've seen the movie, you know what Beth did. That was extremely stupid. I don't even need to mention any more than that. You already know if you've seen the movie, and if you haven't, I'm not going to spoil it, but trust me. But even with these stupid moves, their characters are written to show that the characters are just like that. The one that goes jumping in the chute, well, they had already shown that she's a bit of a daredevil and risk taker, and just kind of didn't work out for her in the end. So, and the characters are all well written. We actually care about the characters. It's not like there's 2 or 3 characters and 3 or 4 cardboard cutouts, or yeah, this girl's a slut, this is the final girl, this is the virgin. What, you need more character than that? And another thing that really helps out is that the main monsters of the movie don't show up until about half an hour into it. And even when they do show up, it's not for another 15 minutes after that that they really are noticeable. Before for 15 minutes we see flashes of them, but we don't actually see one as such. And some people would complain about that being too slow of a start, but what the movie's doing during that first half hour really is developing the characters. And if you spend that much time on character development, by the time the monsters do show up, you're bound to care about at least some of them. You want at this point, you basically want them all to survive, even though you're pretty sure not all of them will. And not all of them do. But you want them to, and that's something that you can really only get from both good acting and good plot and good script writing. And you get all of that. And the monsters themselves, I honestly think were pretty scary. They're humanoid. You can tell that much, but at the same time, you can also tell that they kind of evolved to live in caves. They're blind because they don't need to see, but they can hear really well, and they're pretty strong. But at the same time, they're not invincible. They can be beaten. It's just they basically have home field advantage, which You that's, in my mind, a little scarier than a human stalker, because it just feels more realistic almost. And as for the ending, it was a cop out. I'm not gonna lie about that. I did not care too much for the ending. From what I hear of the UK ending, it was quite a bit better, but the US ending was a bit of a disappointment. Really only served to set up a sequel, which sequel did come out, and let's just say the movie was probably fine without a sequel. Another thing about this movie is it is violent, but at the same time it doesn't really overdo it with the gore. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of blood, a lot of violence, a lot of, pickaxes to the throat, heads being crushed, you get a lake full of blood. But, it's all set up, it all serves its purpose, it doesn't feel like, the later Saw movies or Hostel or something like that, where it's just gore for the sake of gore, and where the gore itself is trying to scare you. It's mean, it's a brutal film, but at the same time, it doesn't overdo the gore, which almost makes it harder to watch because it's actually fairly realistic how it does it. And the special effects are really good too, which doesn't help. It's none of that bright red blood or anything like that. It's all quite realistic, and there's not so much of it that it makes you laugh at how over the top it is, because it's not over the top. It's almost uncomfortable to watch, and for me, in the end, if you're a horror movie fan and you have somehow not seen The Descent, do so. It has really strong characters, really strong plot, really strong writing, really strong effects, but if you can see the UK cut, English. Don't stick with the US cut, because the ending just cheapens the whole thing. I honestly feel. You can take this for what it is or leave it. Until next time. Okay, I'll try to think of a better sign off for next time.